2021 has been a year of real surprises when it comes to smartphones. We've had a significant push for foldables. We've had complete flagship experiences in tiny footprints. We've had budget phones that have literally changed my entire perception of value. So, it's time to declare some winners. We've got 10 categories, all leading up to the single overall 2021 champion. A phone so good, I've even got a special trophy made just for it. Okay, let's start with design. What is the most impressive phone from the outside? And there are a couple of close contenders. I spent almost the entire year raving on about Samsung's S21 Ultra, how it's striking, but at the same time somehow also understated. I was really close to giving this to Xiaomi, because while they do make some, how do I put this, polarizing designs, they do also have a couple of standouts, like the Mi 11 Lite, which is so thin that it barely feels real, and the Mi Mix 4 with its completely even, uninterrupted screen, made possible by an actually decent in-display selfie camera. But the winner of Best Phone Design of the Year, I'm gonna give to the Vivo X70 Pro Plus. This phone is supremely comfortable to hold. They've designed a finish that you literally cannot get fingerprints on, even if you try to. The buttons feel distinctly luxury, and while I wouldn't say I particularly love this glossy section on the back, it can also double as a mirror to be able to take rear camera selfies with. Now, we can't have a best without a worst. So, welcome to a bonus round of who has made the ugliest phone of the year. And there's a few strong candidates. Asus's Zenfone 8 was notably devoid of character. Kinda looks a bit like a Wish.com phone. This smartphone for Snapdragon insiders, yes, that's the real name, made by Qualcomm, the chipmaker themselves, also feels very much like a prototype. But the winner of Ugliest Phone of the Year has got to be this special edition version of the Honor 50. The only way I can think to describe this phone is, it's a bit like someone just vomited the alphabet all over it. But there's another side to design, because as well as making a phone look and feel premium, the other challenge that a lot of companies are starting to face is the size constraint. How do we fit all the things that people are starting to want into a phone while keeping it compact? And there's one phone that I think has done this better than any. Honourable mention to the Asus Zenfone 8, which, boring design aside, is 90% of the capability of the big ones, achieved into 60% of the footprint. A lot of things had to be re-engineered to make this possible. And also, props to Samsung's Z Flip 3. As a tech person, this is a hard phone to recommend to someone. It's $1,000, but it has the specs of a $500 phone. However, excuse my French, it just feels flipping fantastic. Super premium, really nice materials, and the fact that it folds in half means that we're not just talking about fitting in your trouser pockets, this can fit into your shirt pocket. But the winner of Best Compact Smartphone of 2021, I'm giving to the iPhone 13 mini. No gimmicks, no one particularly groundbreaking feature, it's just the complete latest iPhone experience, smaller. And now thanks to huge battery improvements, this 13 mini lasts longer than last year's full-size iPhone 12. Speaking of battery though, there is a limit to how much you're going to be able to get from a small phone. If endurance is a high priority, you are going to need to look bigger. And the winner of this category is not the phone I expected. See, battery life is a very complex specification. Most reviewers, including myself, we just generally try to keep it simple by referring to how many milliamp hours of capacity that a phone has. But the truth of it is, it depends on display technology, how well the phone regulates temperature, massively on software and how efficiently it's able to allocate resources, but also things like battery voltage. And so, in 2021, we've ended up in a situation where even though we have phones like the Galaxy S21 Ultra and the Xiaomi Mi 11 Ultra with 5,000 mAh capacities, or hell, even the ROG Phone 5S Pro with a 6,000 mAh capacity, they're all beaten by a phone with less than 4,500, the iPhone 13 Pro Max. This phone's battery life is so unbelievably healthy, I've sometimes finished days using it with over 70% left. I mean, you can technically get a phone that lasts even longer. You know, there's ones that are effectively just a dialer with a power bank taped to them, but this is the best battery life in a form factor that's somewhat palatable. And hey, if you find my videos palatable, then a sub to the channel would be prized. What if you don't want something palatable? What if all you wanted was an absolute beast, a spec monster, a phone designed to play the most demanding games you can get on a mobile platform? Well, you're in luck. Gaming phones have never been as competitive as they are now in 2021. They're getting so good that it's almost frustrating that developers aren't making games that properly take advantage of them. Anyways, there's three main companies fighting in this space. You have Red Magic, who's making such high-powered, hardware-rich phones for literally $500 that you do genuinely wonder where their profit's coming from. Ridiculous value, but the phones do feel a little rushed with arguably half-baked software. Then you have the other extreme with Asus, whose ROG Phone 5S Pro hits $1,500. But hey, if you have $1,500 and you like games, there is nothing quite like it. In fact, this thing basically takes a 2021 flagship and tops it in almost every regard. It doesn't have a 5,000 mAh battery, it has 6,000. It doesn't have a Snapdragon 888, it has an 888 Plus. It doesn't have a 120Hz refresh rate, it has 144. And we're not talking 8 or 12 gigabytes of RAM, 18. Also, quite importantly for a gaming phone, a reliable accessory ecosystem. Whether that's earphones or controllers or external cooling attachments, you have options. But in my opinion, the best gaming phone sits somewhere in between these two, with the Lenovo Legion Duel 2. It avoids the software pitfalls of the Red Magic, it gets very close to the performance of the Asus, and it starts at $700. Kind of funky looking though. And finally, just before we get to the best overall phones in each price tier, I just want to touch on foldables. Because while I don't think these flaccid book-style open-close phones are the final destination, they do still feel a bit like a half-baked idea in some senses. 2021 is the first year where I have seen some mainstream conversation about them. So, it's time to analyze. If a foldable is what you want, the only company it makes sense to buy from is Samsung. There is Microsoft, who makes the Surface Duo. Nice looking, but far too many compromises to recommend it. There is Huawei, but no Google services makes it a really dicey option. And there is Royole, the company who actually made world's first foldable, but I wouldn't trust their software support as they're primarily a display company. Their foldables are more of a tech demo than actual consumer-ready phones. So, that leaves us with two choices, Samsung's Z Fold 3 or Samsung's Z Flip 3. And between them, I would award Best Foldable Phone to the Z Fold 3. It's the only foldable that does deliver a tangibly expanded experience compared to just a normal flagship. The potential for extreme productivity is here. You've just got to decide if you're in the minority who's willing to look past all its compromises to be able to take advantage of it. Alright, so those are all the specialist phones done, the winners for people with specific needs. But now, it's time to look at the overall winners. So we're gonna have best budget phone, best mid-range phone, best flagship phone, best super phone, and then finally the overall best value phone across all of these categories. The one that will be taking home this very fancy trophy that I've had made for it. Alright, so I'm classing budget phone as anything around or under $300. And to be honest, every realistic contender in this segment is either a spin-off company of Xiaomi or Oppo. And it is not hugely surprising, the main profits to be had in the smartphone market are not here. Honorable mention to the Realme 8. This company is quite consistently bringing out some of the most extreme price to performance ratios I've ever seen. And also the Poco X3 Pro and the just announced Poco M4. I know, there's a lot of different names here, but these two are pretty special. However, the winner of best budget phone on the market is Xiaomi's Redmi Note 10 Pro. I genuinely think, and I don't say this a lot for budget phones, this is a beautiful device. And for about $250, it is shockingly well-rounded. Good battery life, good stereo speakers, fluid 120Hz display. And importantly for me, also a really good camera for the price. My only slight reservation is that Xiaomi have literally just announced the Redmi Note 11 Pro, which is China only for now, but based on past history, I would expect a global release probably early next year. Now then we've got the mid-range category, the $300 to $600 sweet spot. All phones I recommend here are phones that feel complete, even though they're half the price of the top tier. And in this category, there is one clear winner, which is almost a shame because of how many good options there are. Like the Oneplus Nord 2, which is a $400 phone that you could very easily mistake for a $700 phone. Screen, battery, camera, the polish just makes it that little bit more premium. That said, there have been a reasonable amount of people who have said that their Nord 2s have exploded, We are only talking a handful, but that's still enough to suggest that it might be a fundamental problem with this particular handset, so I'm gonna hold off on saying you should buy one. The Poco F3 though, if $400 is all you want to spend, I can't recommend it enough. It's got the flagship feeling. And finally, the Realme GT. This is the highest end phone Realme makes, and so given how much this company manages to pack into $200 phones, you can probably imagine that for $500, this thing is stacked. But specs aren't everything, and based on the experience of actually using them, one phone takes the cake here. Google Pixel 6. The Pixel 6 is not just a phone that can kind of keep up with its more expensive offerings, there is a magic to it. The way it feels to use is not good or great, it's delightful. And the camera, while not without inconsistencies, is really powerful and really fun. So what about flagships? The best phone in between $600 and $900. At this kind of price, we're talking luxury. We're talking things you don't need, but you might want. Potentially quirky extra features, and also you can demand extreme reliability. Okay, couple of honorable mentions. One to Xiaomi's Mi 11, an all-round, technically tremendous package. One to the Oneplus 9, which had mixed reception at launch, but that was mostly due to overhyping than the phone actually being bad. And multiple updates later, it now stands as a really good option. And also, the Samsung Galaxy, where are you? S21, which is not what I'd call an exciting phone. It's definitely not breaking any technological records, but it is a neat, practical package that you can trust. And even though the camera hardware is about as exciting as watching paint dry, I'm constantly surprised by how much Samsung's managed to push out of it. But the winner, at $899, only just qualifying for this category, is the Google Pixel 6 Pro. Just like the 6 Pro just feels alive. It's lifted by like really fun, intuitive, customizable software, and quite an underrated screen too. I wouldn't say it's the best phone money can buy, mostly let down by some not too stellar video recording and some good but not great battery life. But it is the best until you hit $1,000 plus. But what if you do? What if you just want the best phone and money is no object? Here's where things get interesting. In this category, you've basically got each company's top tier offering. They're no-holds-barred, innovation-crammed hero phones. Huge cameras, big batteries, gorgeous screens, all the extras. Okay, two runners-up. First is that Vivo X70 Pro Plus I mentioned at the start. It's one of the most fun phones I've ever used, with an emphasis on the camera. It's a treat comprised of top-shelf hardware and really powerful software. And it's so good that in a fair few scenarios, I would say this is the best phone for photos. And secondly, the Samsung Galaxy, there we go, S21 Ultra. This was the first major flagship to come out in the entire year. And it's so well-rounded that it's still now considered by many a benchmark for others to strive for. Worth also mentioning is Sony. I feel like they've come a really long way in the last few years. And for certain top-level pros, no one does it better. But they don't quite make my default recommendation to most power users. There's two phones that do. First is Xiaomi's Mi 11 Ultra. This is a really similar spec to Samsung's S21 Ultra, but feels like it's almost been built to beat it. It takes the already extreme and dials it up just a little further, with one of the most obvious examples being the second screen on the back. It lets you check the time without turning your phone over. It lets you take photos using your main rear cameras. They've even added a feature that means you can just use this second screen, and it will boost your battery to, no joke, 14 days on a single charge. The second winner? It's got to be the iPhone 13 Pro Max. On the face of it, a very similar phone to the 12 Pro Max, and aside from one thing, it would be pretty easy for me to write this off as a small iterative upgrade. But that one thing, the battery life improvement, makes this so unbelievably reliable that it's changed the way I use my phone. Combine that with cameras, speakers, and a screen that are very close to best in class, now is a good time to be an iPhone user and to upgrade said iPhone. The normal iPhone 13 Pro is also really strong. It's basically the same phone, but instead of extraordinary battery, it's more like excellent. Okay, that leaves me with one final decision to make. If I had to pick one phone out of every single one on this table, what would it be? Which is the most surprising, best value experience you can get? Well, here is our super heavy custom obsidian black trophy, and it is for Smartphone of the Year 2021, the Google Pixel 6. It is crazy to me that a phone costing just $599 can actually get me excited to use it. In almost all cases with these kinds of phones, it normally boils down to which one makes the least compromises versus a flagship. But the Pixel 6 has almost the same hardware and almost the same experience as the $899 Pixel 6 Pro, and even at $899, that phone feels pretty special. And while for $899 I would rate the Pro's camera as very good, not the best, at $599, with almost the same experience, the normal Pixel 6 becomes pretty much the best value camera system you can buy. And I'm not just talking about on a phone. Okay, here's something we can all relate to. Video calls that look something like this. Well, this is what today's sponsor, the OBSBot Tiny 4K, is trying to combat. This is probably the most jacked webcam you've ever seen. You're gonna wanna hear this. It shoots video in 4K with an HDR feature. It has built-in autofocus, as well as dual omnidirectional microphones to isolate noise. That's all fine, but more unusually, also a gimbal. This camera can smoothly pan and rotate on its own accord, and it uses AI to be able to do so, making sure that your face is always in the center of the frame. And the side effect of this intelligence is that you can also control it with gestures. Very interesting indeed. Links for the OBSBot Tiny are down below. To check out my last gadgets video, click here. Or to find out why the metaverse is both hugely exciting and kind of horrifying, click here. My name is Aaron, this is Mr. Who's the Boss, and I'll catch you in the next one.